injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by Berger and Hicks. As always, you can check out Berger and Hicks on their website, their Instagram, Twitter, all that, and we'll have the website and their number scrolling down below. And we are in this series previewing the upcoming series against the Washington Nationals. Of course, we have Eli Sussman, Ken Bafad. I am Danny Rodriguez, your host. We'll be guiding everyone along for this ride. And let's start with the series before against the New York Mets. The Marlins falling 2-1, including a walk-off home run by JD Martinez. And would any of you guys be surprised if I told you that was JD Martinez's first ever walk-off home run in his career?
I saw that. I was really shocked by that because he's hit 300 something. He is really high up there in terms of active home run leaders. And that was really shocking to me. He's never done it that way before.
I was rejoiced by
I did get an up close look at it.
Kevin, can I help you?
I did get
the live stream.
I did get a front row seat to that one. My first day of coverage this season and during the regular season, that is on the series finale of this one. So this series really did come down to the wire right there. Marlins leading 2-1, entering the bottom of the ninth of the rubber match of this series. And it kind of, unfortunately, it tied in pretty well with what I was writing on Fish on First about Tanner Scott the morning of yesterday's game, about how despite the success he's been having, he had a scoreless streak that dated back to April at that point. He's still not, I don't think he's in that consensus top tier of relief pitchers in baseball. And a big reason why is in his career, the walks have been really out of control. Last year was an outlier, and it was obviously the best year of his career, and he was one of the best relievers in baseball. But even this year, even when he's been preventing runs, the walks have been higher than ever. And in this game, the reason why they lost in 9 innings is because he walked Francisco Lindor to lead off the inning. And so the home run is a 2-run shot instead of a solo shot. Otherwise, if this game goes to extras, I really like the Marlins' chances going head-to-head against the Mets bullpen. But it's like Tanner talked about it post-game. Skip mentioned it pretty quickly post-game about, what would you do differently in that situation? It wasn't so much the pitch that JD hit out, which was a pretty well-located slider, all things considered. It was the fact that he walked Lindor and that he also fell behind in the count 3-1 to JD Martinez. That is with Tanner Scott, even though he is somebody that every team will need. There's a new report out today that we'll probably get into from The Athletic, like identifying a handful of specific contending teams that are going to be interested in him. There's still some warts on him. There's still some unpredictability, and that's ultimately going to limit what the Marlins can realistically expect to get back for him in return if they do trade him.
Yeah, I don't know which game specifically it was. It may have been the second one where the Marlins just struggled defensively, man. It was, and that ended up costing runs. It may have been the game where 2 runs. Marlins ended up fighting back there, but it was one of the first 2 games that defense did not look good. But I guess just sticking a little bit to that third game, a lot of credit to Rodri Munoz. He made the adjustments that Skip wanted him to make. I believe it was a lot of the fastball over the plate. That's really what he wanted to see. I believe he got generated a couple whiffs off of that and just looked. I know he's had really good starts, but this one was by far the best start of his career. And I'll have to look back at the other two, but I mean, this is probably the best lineup he's won a game against. He's looked really good against, I guess you could say. The best lineup he's had most success against, I guess you could say. But yeah, looked really good. At the end of the day, unfortunately, Tanner Scott struggles. That happens to everyone. Funny enough, the last time he gave up a run was, I believe, to a Marcell Ozuna homer, and this time around, it's another home run. So tough luck for Scott. We'll talk a little bit about, obviously, the athletic report, as well as, I believe, John Heyman noting the specific team there. But Tim Anderson, shout out to him. Multi-hit game in all 3 games. He's has himself a little hit streak going. Otto Lopez came back. I believe he had an RBI in there. Jazz and Berger with homers. Offense looked good. They kept them in. They had leads in, I believe, all 3 games at one point. Maybe not the second game, but obviously the first one they did. And then yesterday they had the lead all the way up until the final out of the game. So just tough series for the Marlins. They have a chance to go up against the Nationals team, which they got swept by. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. And with Robbie Munoz and how well he performed, I don't want to say this is maybe a long-term question, but with him, do you continue to see him staying in the rotation for the rest of the season? And do you, maybe he's earned his way into the rotation? I don't want to go into next season, but for the rest of the year, do you think he's earned a place in this rotation?
Who else do they have?
Yeah.
Who else is there? Like, who else do they have? And this guy's pitching pretty damn well. It was fun to talk to Scott about him. That me and Kevin did a couple weeks ago about how he thought that he fixed what was ailing him at the start of the year in Jacksonville in the majors. And I think, not to disagree with you too much, Kevin, because his last start was really good, but I think his second career start was also very, very good, where he went 6 innings. I think got a couple more hits, but struck out 2 more guys. So I like this guy. And like I said, for lack of other options, even if there were maybe some other B-type prospects that were ready to come up, like a Monteverde or somebody like that, this guy would still belong in the majors. So for the rest of the year, he should be on the Marlins.
Yeah, he should. And, you have someone like a Luzardo, which we'll get into. Definitely the reports sway one way and the other with him in terms of if he will be traded. And we'll see what happens there. Obviously, Weathers is out. He should be back soon, probably, I want to say maybe in the next 2 weeks. But he deserves a shot to be here. I mean, they've chosen him over Max Meyer. They've chosen, we'll talk about him later, Sean Anderson over Max Meyer. So Munoz probably the best out of that crop that come up from AAA this season in terms of starting pitching. So we'll see what happens with him. He has a lot to show. He's still just 24 years old, so he still has a long way to go and hasn't even entered, I guess, the quote-unquote prime of his career. So there's a lot to like. A very deep arsenal that he uses almost all of his pitches, and he makes a lot of guys swing and miss, especially with the slider, which is a pitch that Skip has even noted is really good. So I like what I've seen from Munoz. Obviously, when you go up against a team like the Dodgers, it's definitely rough. And surprisingly, made it, I think, 4 or 5 innings through that game. And then in his last start, which was a really good Texas Rangers lineup, he goes 5. So or 4 or 5 in there. But yeah, I mean, he's given the Marlins innings, and he's given the Marlins a chance to win. All in all.
Yeah. And then we could go him and maybe go into the other end of the spectrum this series with Brax, who, again, it's back-to-back. I don't want to say blow-up starts, but starts maybe you not want to see Braxton Garrett. For now, it kind of maybe seems like you could say that maybe that complete game shutout was an anomaly on him so far this season, just the way he's been performing and giving up multiple hits and earned runs. Just with this last start with Brax, what is your guys' stance on him? Because it seems like he's a completely different pitcher than when we saw him throw the Maddox.
It's complicated with him because in this game it was start to finish one of his more underwhelming performances that he had, although he wasn't helped by his defense whatsoever. There were, I think, 2 official errors and at least 2 other bad defensive plays from the very start of the game that made it a lot more difficult on him. So he wasn't missing bats the way that he often does. And because of that, he had to rely more on his defense. And we've seen just at times, this is by a lot of measures, one of the very worst fielding teams in baseball. So there are going to be starts like that where innings go on a lot longer than they should. And there's so many, when you give these teams too many scoring opportunities, eventually they'll cash in. He's still throwing a ton of strikes. He has one of the best strikeout to walk ratios in baseball this year, and he didn't walk anybody in this game. Still, there were just too many hits overall, and he settled down for a couple innings, and then I think Starling Marte basically knocked him out of the game in the 5th inning with a long home run off of him as well. When Brax is going well, he keeps it in the ballpark, and it's a lot of ground balls. And in this game, a lot of the ground balls just did not turn into outs on him. So yeah, it doesn't really change my perception of him that much, other than like last year was close to a best case scenario for somebody like him, where his command was awesome, and he got a lot better defensive performance behind him last year than he did this year. So he is a lot better than his 6 point whatever ERA would suggest, but somebody that, yeah, overall, this has been a frustrating season outside of that one shutout. I think you just put it really well. The shutout was the anomaly that he's had so far this year, and everything else has kind of looked really similar, where it's a lot of singles and a lot of balls in play. And overall, it's been a disappointment.
Yes,
His
same
lack of-
with
his
Alex,
lack of
Kevin.
swing and miss, like-
Oh, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say his lack of swing and miss. Like, I know he's not like, atypical strikeout pitcher or anything like that, but his lack of swing and miss is, when you have to kind of rely on your defense and then they let you down, that's kind of what happens to a pitcher like this. So, I mean, that slider, which is now his best pitch, he only got 3 whiffs with that pitch in that start. So, pretty tough. I mean, he's at least been better than that, especially with the slider, but in this start, he really didn't have swing and miss almost at all. And then the curveball was, I think in this start, the curveball was pretty terrible. He was well over the plate with that curveball, which used to be his best pitch, and now it's kind of gone. I would probably scrap it if I were him, but that's just me talking. But yeah, lack of swing and miss is also, this is stuff like this will happen when you don't have swing and miss pretty much at all.
Yeah. So with Braxton's overall season, I know we mentioned it's not the same that from last season, but how would you guys fare him for the rest of the season? Do you think maybe he could pick it up? Do you believe it's something mechanically, mentally with Brax? Because it's, again, a completely different picture than last season. Again, dealing with injuries, but it just seems like this is someone that maybe needs some more retooling to get back to where he was last season.
I mean, yeah, he's gonna have to pick it up at some point. I mean, we saw what he did last year. There's reasoning to think that he could look somewhat similar to that, and hopefully not make last year feel like an anomaly in his career. Honestly, so he should be able to pick it up. I mean, he threw Maddox for a reason, and that was a very good lineup against left-handed pitching. So there's a reason I think he'll pick it up, but we'll see. Too early to say right now, and he's got nothing to lose right now. Honestly, he's got a full season to work it out. This team isn't going to compete, or not going to compete, but they're not going to make the playoffs anytime soon. They're going to try to win every game, obviously, just not going to make the playoffs. And I don't think he's a name that you're going to really. It's going to get floated around, obviously, by the media as a potential trade chip or trade candidate, but just don't really see it happening with not only the amount of control that he has, just struggles, so far this season.
Yeah. Kevin, you mentioned earlier with Tim Anderson, he had 2 hits in every game. I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about him. And, you mentioned this little hit streak. Do you guys think Tim Anderson is picking it up at all? Is it time to be positive on Tim Anderson, or it was just a lucky stretch of games for him?
Hopefully he gets it going. But, I mean, Eli and I were talking about this off camera. They were all singles. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Obviously, you'll take that over, a strikeout. So, but I mean, this guy has definitely struggled. There's just no other way to put it. Defensively, I guess surprising to say the least. Better than what we saw the last couple seasons for him. But I mean, low expectations is what you should go in with throughout the rest of this season. And if there was something lower than lower, I mean, you would do that. But yeah, I mean, let's just see what happens. See what he could do, and hopefully for the sake of him, he gets it going. So.
The WRC plus up from 22 to 33. 100 is league average. 100, he's 1/3 of the way to the league average based on these last few games that he's had. Yeah, it's you got to be relieved for him, because it just did not seem possible for him to be as bad as he had been for the first 2 months of the season. And it had to get a little bit better here. What's frustrating is now he's still being squeezed into this role as an everyday shortstop, and I just don't understand why there can't be a little bit more of an in-between with him. And it's got to be difficult to process as a player like him, who has, without even a second thought, he'd been an everyday starting player for like 8 years in a row, even during his struggles last year. Ultimately, like when the eye test and the results and the expected stats all point in the same direction, that you're just not the same guy anymore. And when you're on this team with a couple other interesting middle infielders that you want to evaluate, like Otto Lopez and even Vidal Brujan and Xavier Edwards, even, it seems, I just don't know how much longer you could have him kind of blocking them by playing every single day. Well, I do know that he's going to get a slightly longer leash while he's getting multiple hits every single game. This is going to be something I guess we could reevaluate as soon as next week if he dips back into a mini slump again. But the upside just is not there at all for him at this point. So I'd like to see eventually they just transition him into more of a supporting role where they can still get the positive impact of his intangibles without, preventing other guys from developing who are ready for extra reps that they're not getting right now.
And maybe just for TA, something that could definitely help him is a rather more patient approach. I mean, you look at what he's done this season. You're gonna have to look, but I think I think he has less than 10 walks. I think it's 7, maybe 8, and he has about maybe 40, 50 strikeouts right now. So that's not good. But I think if he kind of fits what this team has done, especially last season, but this season too, just finding a rather patient approach, not swinging at everything that comes to you, that'll help him, at least set him up ahead of the count most of the time, work some walks. I mean, geez, when you have less than 10 walks and over, I want to say close to 200 plate appearances, maybe even more by now, it's definitely rough. I mean, that just can't happen. And you have other guys who are having more success than him at the AAA level. You could call up over this guy right now. Obviously, Xavier Edwards is the evident name there. So we'll see. Definitely interesting case. Hopefully he gets it going for himself, to set himself up at least to find one more deal, at least one more major league deal at this point.
Can you guys tell me what day was the last time Tim Anderson got a walk? Can you guys tell me the day, or at least the team they played?
It may have been the Rangers series.
Further back.
Diamondbacks?
You're right in the middle, Kevin. You're almost there.
Than the Padres.
May 27th was the last time he got a walk.
Jesus Christ.
And that was,
I believe,
first game. It's been close to a month. It's about 3 weeks right now. 2.5 weeks the last time Tim Anderson drew a walk. But if you want to go on some positive note, Mets series, he only struck out one time. So maybe to look at something there. If Alex is still there, I want to ask him something. Staying in the infield position, we saw Xavier Edwards go down. In the way Tim Anderson has been playing, when is the next time you think Xavier Edwards will come up to be a Marlin? Do you think we see in the next month, 2 months after the trade deadline? When do you believe Xavier Edwards will suit up again?
Yeah, I think it'll probably have to be after the trade deadline. When he got called up, me and Eli and everybody were saying we don't expect this to be a short-term thing, and then they do it anyways to save Emmanuel Rivera. So I don't really get it. That was one of the more puzzling moves of the season to me, to keep Rivera over Edwards, who has much more upside than a much older player. So even though Rivera's defense at third base particularly is good, he doesn't do much else, especially offensively. So I was really surprised to see Rivera stick around over Edwards. But if that's the way they're deciding to go, I think it's telling that they are valuing the defense of Rivera over Edwards right now. And maybe they think Edwards still has some things to work out in AAA. I don't think so because of what he's done the last couple seasons offensively, but maybe they think he has some work to do at shortstop still, which could be true. If they want him to be a long-term shortstop, I guess it isn't the worst thing to have him go down to AAA and work out a little bit more at shortstop because he's really barely played the position. So I'm guessing that's what they want to do is build him long-term as a shortstop. And they think he can work it out in AAA and needs to work it out in AAA rather than majors. I would have let him work it out in the majors, but I'm not Peter Bendix and the Marlins. So he's going to work on his defense in the minors. He's been playing at shortstop. He'll probably continue to play at shortstop. And that's what I can say about that. So once there's room available, though, I think there's room available now. But if another spot becomes open, probably trade deadline, you'll see him back, I think.
Yeah, and we'll go on from Xavier Edwards to talk about somewhat minor news that came out today with Burch Smith getting DFA, designated for assignment, and for the call-up of the one, the only Sean Anderson, which I know nothing about. I'll tell you that right now about Sean Anderson, next to nothing. But Eli, we talked about this right before the stream about Burch Smith and how he's been a bit of a surprise for Marlins fans, the way he's been playing, at least better than expected. I know expectations weren't set too high, but the way he did play, they at least were going above what most people thought with Burch Smith.
It was one of the stranger transactions of the entire year when right at the end of spring training, they threw what's called like an elevation clause. I'll have to double check exactly what it was called that allowed him to essentially force his way out of the Rays spring training camp and onto the Marlins 40-man roster and make the opening day roster for the Marlins. And he's been with them throughout this entire time for the last 2.5 months, somehow, during a period of time where Declan Cronin was optioned, where Anthony Maldonado spent most of his time in AAA, where guys that you think are better or certainly will have more significance to the team long term were squeezed out. He was actually one of the oldest players on the team this year, Burch Smith, 34 years old, the epitome of a journeyman. He'd been everywhere over the last handful of years, including internationally, before coming over. And he was not a mop-up guy. He was like the half step above a mop-up guy, where he was pitching low leverage situations, usually with the team trailing, but sometimes not, sometimes more important ones. And like the fastball velocity was all right. It was around average at times, maybe a tick below for a righty reliever. And the breaking ball occasionally got some nasty swings on it, but he just got hit really hard. Statistically, you would say he's unlucky because he had a 4.5 ERA. His FIP was like right around 3. That's great.
305.
305.
Yeah, but you actually watch it, and he was getting hit really hard. There were guys that were spraying line drives, and even though it was staying in the ballpark, he wasn't fooling a lot of hitters out there. So I kind of lean more towards the actual run prevention number. I think that's a better reflection of who he is. That being said, I think his value is a little bit higher than it was when the Marlins acquired him out of nowhere. I wouldn't be shocked if they flip him for cash considerations if a couple teams try to claim him. He's not useless. Like, they didn't keep him on this roster. They weren't forced by anybody. If he had legitimately pitched bad, they would have squeezed him off. But I think the bottom line is he was here because Huascar Brazoban had his visa wacky issue, because JT Chagua had his neck injury that kept him out for a couple months. And now that both of those guys are back, it's as simple as that, where he was just a placeholder until those more experienced guys got back from their issues. And for the most part, with the exception of Brian Hoeing is that one reliever who's still on the mend from now his injury. But they've been relatively healthy overall in the relief corps right now, and that's made Smith entirely expendable at this point.
It's a weird transaction, too. I don't know if maybe
upward.
Go ahead, Carver.
No, I was just going to say, what Eli's thinking of is the upward mobility clause is what he had in his contract with the Rays. So they either have to add him to their 26-man roster or basically tell other teams that we're going to trade him, and they traded him to Marlins for cash. So it was really interesting. I know I was like questioning it at the time because they squeezed out Anthony Maldonado, right? And they put this guy on the roster after not even seeing him throw a pitch in person. So that was weird. But yeah, he was okay while he was here. It's when you have nothing really invested that much and the guy starts to struggle, you see things like this happen.
Yeah, the one weird thing is, and maybe Eli, you could explain a little bit. He had a minor league option. I guess if they used it, he would have declined the getting sent down or something. He had at least according to Fangraphs, he has an option left. They could have just sent him down without DFAing him because Anderson was on the 40-man. Could have been an easier transaction said than done, and you would have kept him at least just in case you needed him later on and didn't have to make another DFA there. But I don't know.
I'm not 1,000% certain. It's possible that Fangraphs is wrong about the option. But the other thing is that he's 34 years old. If he's not good enough to be on your major league team right now, like, what are you going to develop with him at this stage of his career when he's been around? He's been pitching in the big leagues for over a decade now at this point. So it's either he's good enough or he's not. And yeah, his numbers, his performance wasn't awful. I think they'd rather like move him now and maybe get some like cash in exchange for it rather than letting this go on longer and for him to really struggle and for him to be totally useless. So I think that is the thinking here. Like at this point, if he doesn't really have a fit on your team, then yeah, just get whatever you possibly can for him.
No, and that's the crazy thing too, because I think it was in the Jeff Passan article. He mentioned Birch Smith in there as a trade candidate. So I would have to think there's a team that's going to take him. And yeah, I mean he's serviceable at best right now, and yeah, I mean low leverage type stuff. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you hear Birch Smith was traded for cash.
Yeah, and to go from Birch Smith, let's talk a little bit about Sean Anderson, who will also be, I believe, tonight's starting pitcher is Sean Anderson. So I would go to Carver for this or Kevin. I don't know too much about him. I just know that he's starting tonight, and he looks exactly like Stephen Okert. So, look, Alex, can you tell us anything about Sean Anderson or, well, anybody? Well, what can we expect from the new Marlin?
What I've seen is lower to middle velo at the fastball with 3 okay pitches, not overpowering whatsoever, but control numbers really good. That's what I can tell you in the small sampling I've seen from this pitcher.
Yeah, he's only made 2 starts, not even starts. I think 2 appearances in Jacksonville. I like 2 starts. Yeah, 2.4 ERA in there. He was pretty good actually in the PCL, a 2.5 ERA there. Not sure what the fit may have looked like. I'm looking at the research tool here, but yeah, I mean. He was teammates with AJ Puck in Florida, so they know that each other very well. Slider, forcing sweepers, kind of what Carver was referring to there. He made an appearance this year already at the major league level with the Rangers before being traded for cash. Slider, four seamer is what he really went with for the most part, but deep pitch mix similar to what we saw with Puck. I wouldn't say it's the exact same pitch mix, but very, very close. So not surprising to me that, those 2 Florida guys are similar on that end, but we'll see. He's looked good this year, so at least at the minor league level. So maybe he gives Miami a shot to win tonight against Washington, which has been the better team this season than the Marlins. I don't think anyone would have seen that one coming.
And just to be clear, like this is the Ryan Weathers rotation spot that's been vacant right now. So they and shortly before that, they lost Sixto. So you could say that Rodri Munoz is filling one of those spots now. That other one is still undeclared. So they'll give Anderson a shot. He's on the 40-man. He is not all that different from Birch Smith in that he is a journeyman. He's been around a while. He's not as old, but he's been to, 5 different organizations at this point. Well, this will be his 6th one now. He pitched in Korea. He pitched in Korea last year. Earlier this year, do you know where Sean Anderson was 2 months ago? He was in Mexico.
Japan.
He's pitching in the Mexican League. He pitched 1 game in the Mexican League. It was like 7 shutout innings. And then he got signed by Texas right after that. So he's been around, and that's what happens when you just don't have great stuff. You can see in his career, it's a below average strikeout rate. It's a little more walks than you'd want. And the peripherals aren't as ugly as the 5.83 career ERA. The Marlins at this point, they value guys that can eat innings at this point, and they essentially picked him in this trade, this minor trade from the Rangers, instead of giving Yoni Chirinos a start, who's actually been pretty solid in AAA, for example. Or they had other options down there, but I'll be curious to see what exactly differentiates him from some of those other in-house options. He'll get at least 1 start. I don't think anything is guaranteed beyond this. Depends when Weathers is back. But yeah, it's not super sexy profile right here. So I would temper expectations.
Making his first start in 5 years.
His first start in very long time. Yeah, first start since 2019.
Right?
No,
That's
2021. 2021.
21?
No, wait. I'm looking at.
No.
Yeah,
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, it doesn't matter. He's starting a game, but
a long time.
Other thing worth noting, I believe that's the case now. It's that there's now an open 40-man spot, so we'll see what happens there. I assume they'll just give it to a pitcher. Eli mentioned Chirinos. definitely should be an option there for that 40-man spot. Maybe Troy. I know he struggled a little bit if you want to put a position player on there, or Griffin Conine, who's been lighting it up at AAA. So definitely options for that 40-man spot there.
All right. Let's go ahead, Eli. Talk to us a little bit about a flip fish for Marlins Nationals. You can go a lot of different ways. Division rivals. Might have to save some up for feature in the season. But who do you have for flip fish before we get into a break?
I don't think we've used this one before. It's relatively difficult just based on the numbers that you're going to see. As usual, picking a player that was with both of these franchises at some point during their major league career. But he's somebody that you would certainly recognize from his post-playing career as well. So here's what we have. A third baseman and first baseman, played from 1997 to 2009, 13 and a half WAR overall, a little below average as a hitter, but some power, some speed, corner infielder during his career. He had hints that he had short tenures with both of these teams, but he did play for both of them. So yeah, think about it. I'm sure you'll recognize this person, whether or not you remember him as a Marlin or not. We'll find out. But yeah, on the other side of the break, we'll do the reveal, and then we'll get into more of this particular matchup and some other topics that you guys have in the live chat. So stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Any guesses for flipped fish?
Is he like in the media? You mentioned
Not the moment. Not at the moment. No, he has been in the media at times.
I don't know. I feel like I know it. I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue. We're like, I don't know. Third baseman.
Oh, God.
Oh, I thought he was an outfielder.
No, he was
Wow.
mainly third base, and with the Marlins towards the very end of his career, and with the Nationals right after as well. So it was the Marlins in 2007 and the Nationals in 2008. Then he had 14 plate appearances for the Astros in 2009, and then he was done.
Was he teammates with Livan Hernandez in the Nationals? Was he was around?
Maybe.
Not
I
that
think.
year. It doesn't look like.
That'd be cool. Let's see. So going up against the Nationals, there is one player on there we could mention. Carver, you could take it away. I'll put it on here so people know who we're talking about. Mr. Nasim Nunez. Again, in his, I believe, 8 appearances so far this season, as I do my quick background. But with Nasim, it's basically what is expected for him to be a pinch runner, someone not to take too many at-bats or any at all. But with Nasim, just how do you guys think his major league career is going, and is it a possibility that you think that he could be returned to the Marlins? We'll start with Alex.
Well, before that happens, I hope he records his first major league hit, which he still doesn't have. So, yeah, the Nationals are using this guy obviously as a defensive replacement and pinch runner, which is the best things that he does. In his Marlins minor league career, he got it going a little bit with the bat at times, but really was prized for those two things. So that's how the Nationals want to use this guy. It's understandable why. And they're playing to his strengths. To answer your question about moving him back, yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. If this is all that they think he's going to do and not be able to hit the baseball at all, only get 8 at-bats, I think that once they have, one of their prospects come up that is, needs a roster spot or somebody that pushes their way in the minor leagues, that they could, and that could happen this year, that Nasim could be squeezed out, and then he would have to go back to the Marlins. So yeah, and he would need more. I think he would need a little bit more time in AAA to really work out the bat. Obviously, the Nationals think so too. So maybe the Nationals hold on to him the rest of this year, and then maybe next year he starts in the minors again and gets going with the bat and earns his call back up. But it's clear what the Nationals see in this player, and if they think that somebody better is ready, I think that Nassim could go back to the Marlins.
Did it surprise you now that they did take Nassim, how they're using him now? Did it surprise you looking back on it, them taking him, and this is how they use him, or how would you maybe explain how the Nationals took Nassim, Eli? Is this what you had envisioned for Nassim when he was taken by the Nats?
No, this is nuts. This is nuts that you have a guy on your roster that gets one plate appearance every week and a half and is only a pinch runner and defensive replacement. That's wild. Maybe you never know, and you still don't know what exactly would happen if CJ Abrams ever got hurt. I guess they've been fortunate with Abrams being mostly healthy. But what's wild is that Nassim isn't even their backup shortstop. He's like their third string shortstop. When Abrams gets a day off, they've been playing Ildemaro Vargas instead.
Wow.
And that's why Nassim is just barely on the team unless it's a very particular situation in late innings of a close game. He's had one total start so far this entire season, and then everything else has just been really situational like that. It's just wild how it's not all that different from what my assessment was entering the year on him, but some of it I guess is also in relation to the fact that they are so close to the postseason race at this point. And at the same time, that is maybe what will make them have to make an interesting decision on Nassim if they stay as close as they are. If they get to the trade deadline and they're still just 2 or 3 games out of a wild card spot, is chasing that spot when actually using a real 13th position player on their roster, is that really worth more than Nassim's future? Because it's just no guarantee that he ever is able to hit big league pitching at this point. So that'll be an interesting decision for them to make. I think my lean is that they're going to fade from this race. And of all the teams in the National League that are clawing for that spot, I think the Mets are better. I think the Mets are going to get ahead of them. And as well as most of those other teams in that conversation, all those NL Central teams, the Cubs and the Cardinals, I think those teams are just more experienced and more motivated to win now than the Nats are. But for the moment, they are in this spot where they are trying to win games, and they're successfully winning more games than people thought. I think by any measure, the Marlins and Nats had comparable talents entering the year, and I'd say more people than not thought the Marlins were a better team this year, more better suited to compete, and that's not been the case whatsoever. So it's in a really awkward situation for him. You're happy that he's getting those checks as a major league player, and he continues to. And it just must be a really weird experience to go through as a player to get used so much less. He's like a walk-on. Daniel knows about this better than us. I get walk-on players at the very ends of a college
Practice
football
squad.
roster.
Yeah,
guys that have no expectation.
You're on the
whatsoever
team, but you don't play in the games. It's basically you just suit up in the jersey and you stay on the sidelines. Basically, that's what Nassim is doing. And maybe at the end of the year, they let you get a long snap in. They let you do a little kickoff, and that kind of, I guess, feels like what Nassim is doing. And let me ask again, you two, and Carver there. If you're Nassim, if you're personally Nassim, I know you get the MLB checks, you get everything that comes with it. But would you rather be in the minors, getting at bats and improving your game, rather than be a major leaguer, but you're getting, like Eli said, a play appearance and a half? Again, kind of like football, you'd rather be the third string quarterback in Ohio State, or you'd rather be the starter in, I don't know, Utah State, whatever, throwing football. What would you guys rather be if you're Nassim? How do you think he personally feels about the way he's used?
Let me be a Washington National every day, baby. I mean, you're making the MLB check. You're playing every little bit once in a while. You'll get your hit at some point. He'll get it. The next year, if he makes it all the way through this year with Washington, he gets to go down to AAA and work on his game. Let him. He could have this 1 year. He's getting major league service time. So
yep.
Yeah. That's how I see it.
No, it's fair. I'm sure the money is great. Just looking at the at bats, and if he wants to be a starter for the rest of his career and get those real big money, it will be maybe getting more at bats in the minors or so, plate appearances. But again, we just talk about baseball. We're not seeing Nunez. We all probably wish we would in terms of the major league pay. But let's look at the major league lineups we're going to be seeing today between the Nationals and the Marlins. In this pitching matchup, we get to see Sean Anderson. I believe it's Mackenzie Gore tonight, and we can go a little bit on him and how great of a season he's been having. But we can go ahead and just talk first on the Marlins. You're going to see Jazz, Jake Berger, Otto Lopez, basically the same lineup we've really been seeing with some big players and starting DH, first base. Kevin, with this Marlins lineup, we're seeing Manuel Rivera again in third base. I know we all mentioned that we really do like him defensively. Offensively, it's a whole different aspect. What are your current thoughts on Skip putting Emmanuel Rivera at third base, it seems like, every couple days when someone needs a rest?
It makes sense, I guess, defensively. That's what you think. I mean, it gives Jake Berger an opportunity to play first, and obviously it gives Billy the opportunity to DH. So, yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say to it. He's all the way at the bottom of the lineup. There's a reason why. Mm-hmm. So, I guess really not much more. I guess there's not even much that stands out about this lineup.
Dane, how do you let's talk a little bit about Dane. Go ahead, Kevin, on Dane Myers, his arm, what you've been seeing on him so far to start the year.
He's been fine. I mean, there's not really much more to say about him. I think he's a good player. I think he'd be fine. Platoon guy at this point of his career. Obviously, without Avi now there, or how I think still straight platoon actually with Jesus Sanchez. So yeah, he's there. I mean, he could play all three outfields. Gives you that versatility. He'll be an all right player. We'll see what happens next season with Dane, depending what moves the Marlins decide to make. He'll probably be, if he's still with the organization, I assume he will be. He will be a guy who will be playing almost every day for this team. Just seeing how this season's going on, how probably that'll translate over to next season. You'll see a lot of Dane Myers and Jesus Sanchez in the lineup, I think.
Well, credit to, I think it was Steven Strom, for pointing out that this is the first time Jazz is batting leadoff against a lefty. He's not done that at all this year. He's done it, of course, against righties. Almost every game against righties since Luis Arraez was traded, but against lefties, because of his history of struggling in platoon matchups, he's been further down. And this year, we've touched on it, that Jazz is better than ever against lefties. He's actually worse than ever against righties, but he's good enough against lefties that the overall numbers have been fine. And he's been, it's been a fine season for him at this point. And now this is showing some trust in him to do it against a really high quality lefty in Mackenzie Gore. Let me just take a look at the platoon splits that Gore has. Yeah, Gore is somebody that's not usually actually that tough on lefties. So maybe that factors into the equation here, that in this particular matchup, he thinks it's just more talent on talent and not so much you have to really obey that left on left aspect of it for Jazz. So he crushed a home run last night. He's on pace for like 23 or 24 homers and like 30 steals at this point in the season. Yeah, he's been fine. And I think Marlins fans will appreciate every day that they get with him, with concern that maybe there's that chance that he gets moved at the deadline. So enjoy it, because he is, of all these players, I think he's kind of inarguably the most entertaining one to watch just based on the tools that he has.
Yeah. To go with them, Carver, any last thoughts, notes on this Marlins lineup before we head on over to the Nationals and see what they're going to bring up tonight?
No. Emmanuel Rivera still being on this team, like I said before, is just very surprising. Anderson is, just has been so...
Hit streak, baby. Hit streak.
Yeah, it's just been such a struggle for him. I know the Marlins tried to kind of make him that career reclamation guy, and it just hasn't worked. It didn't work last year with another player. It's not working now with this player. And it's a practice that the Marlins have tried to do more than a few times in their franchise history. And even, now amongst new guys coming in, it still is a thing that they're trying to do. And you get why they try to do it, because, hey, these guys used to be and are established players. So you hope that they can, return to at least some form of what they used to be, especially Anderson, who was just, 2 years removed from a really good year. But so you get you get the thinking, but when it doesn't happen, and it's pretty clear to me and to a lot of other people that it probably won't happen, I think that the Marlins need to just adopt that Rays mentality of saying, okay, we messed up. We thought this would work and it didn't, and we're gonna stop it here. So not that you want to see a guy get released or cut or anything like that, but yeah, I think that the Marlins need to be honest with themselves and adopt that more Rays like mentality when it comes to stuff like this. So that's all I would say. We've said that before, so I don't want to go too long. But the only other thing I would say on both lineups is that looking at the numbers, it's just not very good. This is one of the first times that I can remember in a bit that neither lineup has a guy with an 800 OPS in it. So that's the kind of baseball we're looking at tonight.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you're talking about release, don't forget on the market, you have Harold, Garrett Cooper, and Jose Abreu all released, all within a matter of minutes. So
obviously you feel bad for them, but it was kind of funny and crazy how they all got released in like a matter of minutes.
Okay. Let's play a game.
Harold was I think on waivers, and so was Coop, I think.
Yeah, they at least gave other teams a chance to claim them. And with the Astros, they're like, why even bother with this? Because unfortunately, Abreu has been by far the worst of the bunch, despite being the most successful of the bunch. I'll remind people that the Marlins were genuinely interested in Abreu. For a team that doesn't usually spend big in free agency, they were ready to give Abreu a big 2-year deal. Of course, there was a ton of competition. The Astros ended up giving him a 3-year deal for $58.5 million. But that was, unfortunately, I mean, they've already been hamstrung by bad free agent deals the last couple of years. This would have been yet another one, making it even more difficult for them to build a sustainable team if they got what they wanted right there.
Yep,
as available potentially on minor league deals or for the major league minimum at this point. As much as I love Harold, like I'd rather see if he's going to take like the Dane Myers spot, I'd rather see Dane like try to prove himself at this stage of his career. And I'd rather see, if it's about the DH spot, I'd rather see Troy Johnston like get a shot and like show something eventually as this year goes on. I just don't think there's a need to. These guys just aren't really a fit, even as if they're as cheap as possible. Just not a fit for where the Marlins are right now. This is a year where Troy, I don't think we've talked about Griffin Conine on a stream, but Griffin Conine, we've talked about him on our other offerings and on our site as well. Yeah, that's another guy. But if signing these guys takes away an opportunity for one of those players trying to prove there's something more than a quad A guy, then I'd rather have younger guys and just find out what you have in them. So, this is how it goes, unfortunately. None of these guys it's really hard to have a lengthy career if you're defensively limited. And in all these cases, they have to hit for power. They have to be really disciplined in order to make themselves valuable. And yeah, but it's crazy that they all totally aligned. All of it happened at the exact same time, pretty much, with these three.
How would you rank these three in terms of maybe you would want for the Marlins, from maybe least to most? Would it be Abreu, Coop, Harold, or maybe would you have a Coop, Abreu, Harold? I believe if you had to pick, I think maybe Harold of the three, because he can at least play some defense. But it's just, again, no one at all. But
I don't think anyone fits what the Marlins want to do at this point, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and look at this Nats lineup, talk about some pretty good players here they have in the top of the order. Then we could go ahead into prediction time. Maybe we'll slip in some Griffin Cohen talk for Alex, because I know that's something we really need to talk about. But with this lineup, again, I believe with this one, it really starts in the top with C.J. Abrams. He's looking like the next superstar shortstop for the Washington Nationals. And again, maybe someone's having, you could say maybe a bounce back year or sorts, or having a pretty good season. Jesse Winker, I know he's maybe been bounced around a lot since the Reds. And then it really kind of maybe falls off towards the end with Reese, who's really struggling this season, Nick Senzel, and then you have Jacob Young. Kevin, with this lineup, is it really just C.J. Abrams? It starts with him, or maybe other players? I know Jesse Winker's having a decent season. Joey Meneses really can pick it up whenever maybe he feels like it. But again, it just feels like a one-dimensional lineup with maybe Abrams there at the top.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to the Nationals, what they've done this year. They're kind of keeping it really close with the National League, that wild card hunt. I mean, I'm looking right now at the standings. They find themselves just 2 games out of a wild card spot, so they kind of keep going on this trajectory. They'll probably see themselves as buyers in this deadline. Now, Eli kind of mentioned it. It's almost every single team except the Marlins and the Rockies that are in playoff contention right now, at least for that wild card spot. The Braves are kind of on I want to say a losing streak right now. I believe a couple games losing streak, 7-game losing streak, I think it is for them. But they're not going to go. They're not going to go down anywhere. They're going to stay there. Padres, I think they'll keep it up. We'll see what happens with the Cardinals. I know Isaac's boy Pedro Pages hit a homer today, but yeah, it kind of feels like only C.J. Abrams, Jesse Winker got off to a great start. I think Luis Garcia is also still hitting the ball well. Jacob Young's been an interesting piece for them with the speed that he provides, but yeah, it's definitely not the greatest lineup ever. But I think you look at it in a year or two, that's going to be a fun lineup with James Wood in there and the crop of prospects they're bringing up. And someone who's really kind of been underwhelming is Keibert Ruiz. Definitely struggled this season. I know he had injuries as well. So, but he's a guy who's going to be here for a couple of years. I believe it was $100 million deal for I believe 5 years. I want to say. So he's going to be here for a bit.
Yeah. What stands out offensively, kind of the only thing that they do really well is base running. They lead the majors with 100 steals. They have more steals right now than the Marlins are probably going to have all year. You could stop the season right now for the Nats, and they'll probably finish ahead. They have 5 different guys with double-digit steals in mid-June already. And it includes guys that don't even play every day or start every day, like Jacob Young, like Lane Thomas, who missed a little portion of the season due to injury, and he's not even hitting the way that he's capable of, but adding some value as a base runner. He has 16 steals in 39 games. That's on pace for like 70 if he was actually healthy for the entire year.
Yeah,
so they are really capitalizing on the wacky base running environment that we have with the bigger bases, with the limited disengagements right here. So that is allowing them to overperform. And you got to give a lot of credit to their coaching staff right there for like picking out on that and making sure their guys are ready to take advantage of it, because that is a market inefficiency that they are capitalizing on more so than any other team in baseball.
Yeah. And also third in home runs with 56 home runs. So they are getting that run production other ways. Dixon's out at 6. You have Joey Gallo, who's not even in the lineup. It just seems like he's there to hit home runs and potentially hit BDH and some sort. And you have Eddie Rosario with 7. So really home run hitting club there. To go from that, do you guys want to go into prediction time, or do you want to spend a couple minutes talking about Mr. Conine?
Yeah, well, save that conversation for the time. But doing really well. And check out Kevin's article on Conine that went up earlier this week if you haven't already.
But yeah, let's go ahead and prediction time. Talk about this 3-game set against the Washington Nationals. Let's see who's going to be MVP. I'm still up in the air with my series prediction and MVP. But Eli, let's get that video.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
We'll look at the prediction time leaderboard entering what is going to be the 23rd series for the Marlins this year. So our top points getters this year are the ones that get a little bit more than 1 point per series by guessing how many games the Marlins are going to win and who will be the series MVP this past week. We didn't actually get to show the results from this past series against the Mets, where JD Martinez at the last possible moment, when you flip a loss into a win in the decisive game of a series, that is going to get you MVP honors. So congrats to Gabriel, one of our super subs, for nailing that one. But a lot of us picked up points there, except for Kevin, because Kevin was he's been pretty optimistic on the Marlins turning it around this season. But he's not the only one.
So close.
Yeah. To be fair, this was as close as it could possibly get. So
who's going to be the Marlins MVP if they won?
Munoz.
Would have been Rodri. Well, Rodri Munoz had the most value, but actually, obviously, nobody picked Munoz in the series. So I actually, among the guys that were actually selected, I don't know, it may have been Jazz. He had a good series himself, and Berger was fine overall. So yeah, the important thing to remember is that one of us actually has to pick the player in order for that player to win series MVP. So always a reminder that if you want to join along with us, you can become a super sub, fishabonfirst.com/subscriptions, and you can make those predictions leading up to first pitch of every series. So just about 20 minutes to go till this one. Let me get our background set up for the Nets. We didn't really even get into the fact that the Nets swept the Marlins in a 4-game set when these teams previously met in Miami. but this is just a 3-game series between them. So let me find this music as well, and let's get rolling.
All right. As always, lead off for us in prediction time, the one, the only, Mr. Kevin by 5.
I'm going to keep going with the trend of positivity. I'm going to take the Marlins, winning 2 out of 3. And my MVP is going to be Jesus Luzardo. I have a good feeling he'll bounce back against Mitchell Parker on Sunday.
Ooh. Mr. Carver.
Not too confident in Marlins pitching. I know Nationals pitching is extremely young. Don't know what you're going to get out of this guy Anderson. Don't know what you're going to get really from either of the other 2 starters. Nationals 2 out of 3. Luis Garcia MVP.
Ooh. All right, let's go with myself here. Last time faced, the Nats swept the Marlins, and this one they are not going to be swept again, but they are going to lose 1 game. I have Nats taking 2 out of 3. MVP, let's go with my finger picks. Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker having a decent season, the home run of the series. Eli.
It's a Marlins series win. I got them winning 2 out of 3 in DC right here. The Nats are due to regress a little bit from how they've been performing so far. And I think the Marlins are going to do just fine in this one. Facing 3 straight lefties, one of the few times this year where the other team in a series has more lefties than they do. And I think the Marlins are going to do okay in here to take the series. With Brian De La Cruz winning series MVP honors, he's been very productive against the Nats in his career, over a 300 hitter, OPS in the mid 800s over the course of his career against the Nats. So I think he keeps that rolling and drives in a lot of runs for the Marlins as they take 2 out of 3.
All right, there we have it. A lot of positivity. Eli going exactly with DeMar. Great minds thing alike there. Eli, before we go, do we have maybe the prediction for the super subscribers?
Super sub predictions. Yes, I got a few of them before we were coming in. And the ones that sent them in early, there was a lot of love for CJ Abrams as MVP. 3 of the first 6 that sent those in had Abrams in there as well.
Lopez.
So, yeah, and he's been fine, but as we've discussed, even Abrams himself is he got off to a very hot start, and he's faded a little bit from there. It's really hard to explain how the Nats are doing what they're doing, other than the National League is kind of vulnerable right now, and they win a lot of close games. So I do expect a lot of close games in this series either way.
It's all right. In the last game when Nasim Nunez gets his first hit as a walk-off against Tanner Scott, well, I'll be happy that he got series MVP. Well, actually, does Nasim get his first hit this series? Do you guys think that?
Sure,
Does he?
Sure. Yeah.
He gets his first.
The question is whether or not he appears in the game.
He did that.
He did that last time, I think, a couple times.
Yes. Yeah.
I think he'll appear in a game. I don't know if he'll get an at-bat, though.
Ooh.
I'm going to go with no Nasim in here. I'll take the under on whatever props you're giving me on Nasim in this series.
I'll say late inning defensive replacement when
0.5
Marlins
at
are
bat.
losing by 6 runs tomorrow.
I'll go with the
All right.
I don't know.
All right, that's going to do it here for the Marlins. FOF Live presented by Berger and Hicks. For myself, Daniel, Kevin, Eli, Alex. This is FOF Live. Always go Fish and go Panthers. Go Panthers. Hopefully by next stream, they are the Stanley Cup champions. Go Panthers and go Fish.
Time to hunt.
Oh,